Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pragmatic Optimists. I am State Senator Tiara Mack and I'm joined by Attorney Rachel Cohen. And today we're going to talk about the war-ravaged Portland, Oregon. So over the weekend, today is Monday, October 6th. Over the weekend, there was a lot of hubbub with the Portland National Guard potentially being deployed, one from California, and I believe, Rachel, as of yesterday, which I'm going to ask you about because I myself am not an attorney and I cannot keep up with everything that is happening. But originally, Portland, which Trump has a personal vendetta against and somehow hates anything that has to do with women who wear blunt stones and carry a coffee and walk up ample amounts of hill and wear flannel, which I love. And the Portland folks have really leaned into the meme that Portland is really just a hipster paradise over the last couple of days they've been in the news. But I've been seeing that the National Guard is going to be deployed, is not going to be deployed. One of the quotes that I saw from the Trump-appointed federal judge who's on this case was, "Aren't you just circumventing my order?" Which is a very sassy clapback at, please do not try to do the little kid in the back of the car ride. Like, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. So Rachel, can you explain why the National Guard from California, I believe it was about 200 California National Guard, were originally going to be deployed to Portland. And that was, that had a TRO. And then over the weekend, I believe there was also an additional 400 National Guards people who were going from Texas who were going to be deployed to both Portland and potentially Chicago, which you were based in. And we're going to do another episode on what's happening on the ground.
So just for the record, I am an attorney and I can barely keep up with what's happening. It is not a you individually problem. The flood the zone tactic is working pretty effectively, I would say. There's so much happening. And I'm very appreciative of the judges, and pour one out for their clerks that are writing their opinions and doing the research and everything else, who are keeping up with this really unbelievable speed, because this isn't what judicial chambers are set up for. Most of the time, if you got, an order from a judge telling you not to do something, you stop for a beat. And you don't just do the same thing in 13 different places, which is what we're seeing with Trump. The fact that there have been deployments of the National Guard or attempted deployments of the National Guard as this Gavin Newsom case continues to wend its way up through the various court levels of the court system and different issues that are being addressed is really unprecedented. And I try to use that word sparingly, but I really mean it here from a legal perspective. That's crazy. And he's done that over and over again. He did it with the law firm stuff. He does it with the university. You get orders entered and it doesn't matter. He just goes on to the next person or the next target. What we're seeing in Portland is we have this Trump appointed judge who issued a temporary restraining order Saturday night, which would have been the 4th. So Saturday night, she issues a temporary restraining order. She says, I have a couple of quotes that I want to share with y'all, because she doesn't really mince words. This is the closing quote of the first paragraph of the order. Whether we choose to follow what the Constitution mandates with respect to these three relationships goes to the heart of what it means to live under the rule of law in the United States. She's very careful to say that there's substantial evidence that there was no violence or not significant violence at these protests, because that's kind of the crux of the issue, is that Trump says he's federalizing the National Guard to take care of protests that local law enforcement can't handle. I haven't been on the ground in Portland, but I've seen plenty of videos of people coming in like big inflatable suits and just like bopping around because, as you said, they're leaning into the Portland kind of stereotypical dynamic. You hate to laugh at people like trying to scare away the militarized federal agents disappearing their neighbors, but there have been some genuinely funny clips out of Portland protest. The last one that I really want to highlight, because I think that perhaps non-attorneys don't understand just how uncommon it is to accuse attorneys of operating in bad faith. Like, a lot of our stuff in this country only exists because we assume that lawyers are operating in good faith. And that is its own set of issues. There's a mentor of mine, Daniel Medwed, is a professor at Northeastern School of Law, and has an excellent book called Prosecution Complex about how the amount of deference that we give to prosecutors and the assumption that they're always just doing the right thing and operating in good faith, despite just overwhelming evidence that we have a very racially motivated system and prosecutors prosecute people with racial animus and racial motivation and all of these other things, even if it's subconscious with many of them. That assumption of good faith is so deeply ingrained in our system that you can barely even say that when people are bringing crazy charges or anything else. And I give this context both to say, buy Dan's book. He doesn't know that I'm saying this. And also because this quote, I think, stands out, especially with that context. Finally, the president's own statements regarding the deployment of federalized National Guardsmen further support that his determination was not conceived in good faith. You can't get more. I'm going to translate that from Trump appointed judge to how you and I speak. And it is fuck you. That's really aggressive. And so the judge enters this temporary restraining order. And then the next day, Donald Trump tries to deploy Texas National Guard to Portland. And that is where in that hearing, and as of we're recording at 10:22 Eastern on October 6th, I don't believe a judgment has been entered or an order has been entered in this new hearing. Oh, no, that's not true. Sorry. I would cut that, but I won't. I'll save our cutting room. They entered it at the end of the hearing, this expanded temporary restraining order that covers the Texas National Guard too. And I think that the idea of a judge explicitly asking an attorney, aren't you just circumventing my order? We're in trouble. We're in trouble. And if you're waiting for the courts to save us, I'm going to be honest with you, other than Coach Cav et al., the courts are really trying to save us and they're just not being listened to. And if you're looking for some superhero to pop out who will all of a sudden start making Donald Trump listen to judges' orders, I fear it might be you and me. And I think that we might just have to get into the streets and peacefully demand that, which we have been doing, Portland's been doing, Chicago's been doing, reporting from, the war-ravaged city of Chicago today. There's nobody coming to save you. I think it's just a question of how much do we actually depend on each other and show up for each other. So I'm going to leave that there and make Tiara come up with the optimism for this episode. Tiara, back to you.
So, Rachel, what is keeping me optimistic? Even Trump-appointed judges are kind of squinting their eyes and saying, hey, now, this is crazy. This is not the rule of law. We are still judges. And even if it is one or two, and there was reporting a little bit earlier today, again, this is October 6th, that a Trump-appointed South Carolina judge had his house set on fire because Trump spoke unfavorably about him. This is every single side of the aisle, people appointed by the first Trump administration and judges who are finally just saying this is absolutely insane. And if we continue to let this tyrant, exhaust us in the courts and people on the ground, we are going to lose our country. And I am continued to think about Benjamin Franklin saying, a republic if you can keep it. And we are really trying to keep it. And there are people all over the ground. There are people who are standing up in cities all across our country. There are people who are paying attention every step of the day. We are on day 6 of a government shutdown. And there are people who are saying this is actually impetus for us to demand something of our government and demand greater transparency. I am hopeful because you and I, and we've talked about this and we'll continue to talk about it, have our American demands, which are getting more and more people talking about the real issues. It's not about the destination that we have been going. It's about setting a new course and a new destination of where this country should be going, with so many people who are disillusioned by both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party saying that let's finally have real leaders who are pushing us in the direction to where every single person, no matter where you live, your geography in this country, no matter what you believe, where your parents come from, and how much money you make, you can still have a good and decent life. And I think that is something that is turning this large ship in a positive direction. And that's what gives me hope that, yes, it is a few cities. It is some of the largest cities that are on the ground now, but more and more people, especially as we get closer to the second No King's Day, are raising their hands and saying, we are going to be part of the movement of Americans that are going to hold our government accountable on both sides of the aisle.
Oh, and thank you so much. And I usually try not to do this because that was a perfect place to leave it. But I have been meaning to amplify efforts in Memphis, in blue cities, in red states. And so I want to do that before we leave. And this maybe could be something that keeps me optimistic as well. But Memphis and New Orleans, I think, are very differently situated from places like Chicago and Portland. And if you watch us at all, you know that I feel like we need a lot of attention on Chicago and Portland and kind of what we would think of as like the DC bubble cities, though of course they deserve attention as well. But Memphis and New Orleans are really, they are in a tough spot because they don't even have supportive governors. So they are fighting like a two-front war because the state level officials are actively assisting. And there's debates all day long about whether or not people in Chicago and in the Illinois State Police and Chicago Police Department are actually following the directives that they get from the city not to assist ICE agents. So I'm not dismissing that that's a really important conversation that needs to be had about even just the nature of police power, but the active assistance of state police forces in Memphis, people really need eyes on. And so I'm going to make sure it's up on the screen as well. But there's Free the 901, which is a focused campaign that is just not getting the same amount of attention as pretty much any other resistance kind of Instagram. And Oregon, they're doing something amazing where they're mapping every single day all of the confirmed stops that they have from people at checkpoints and marking whether they're feds or state or if they're alleged or unconfirmed. And I would just really encourage you all to take a look at that as well. So that the organizing always keeps me optimistic. I'm sorry to have jumped in at the end, but we're going to turn our attention now to Chicago. And so watch the next video on the playlist because we're going to get into a class action lawsuit that was filed in Chicago this morning, October 6th, here on Legal AF on the Midas Touch Network. Like, subscribe. See you in a second.
Bye, Praggies.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.